Good morning, everybody. It's Friday. It's 10 o'clock. I'm Tim Harris. It's time for 10 with Tim. It's been a good week. It's been a good week in the Word. And I'm excited. I'm loving the Gospel of Mark. Chapter 8 today, verses 22 to 38. Are you good? Have you read? Let's talk about it. I think the little story there, verse 22 through about verse 26, is just so good. Now, I'll admit, first time I read it, years ago, I'm like, what? Because it's just so weird, There at Bethsaida, some people bring a blind man to Jesus. They beg him to touch the man and heal him. They make it sound so easy, right? Just touch him and heal him. Okay, verse 23. Jesus took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. Now, there are moments when Jesus seems to sort of, especially in the Gospel of Mark, miracles are not spectacle. And so this is a kind of thing you see in the Gospel of Mark, but not the deal where he takes them by the hand and they walk clean out of town. I mean, like they take a walk and they walk clean out of town. Like that, what? That's really strange. That's just really strange. That part is strange. You ever done one of those trust walks, like when you're a kid or whatever, and you close your eyes and somebody leads you? Okay, just understand that's what that was. It's like a trust walk. It's one of those moments, I think, when Jesus wants to make it personal, and it's about to be personal. And so Jesus spits on the man's Jesus spits on the man's eyes, laid his hands on him, and then says, "Can you see anything now?" Like that's how I would heal somebody. Like, did it work? Can you see? You know what I'm saying? It's like, what? That doesn't sound like Jesus. He spits on his eyes and it says, "Did it work? Can you see?" Now, I'm making a joke, y'all. That is not what Jesus does, but that's what it sounds like, And the man says, "Well, kinda, not really. I can see stuff, but it don't look like stuff. People look like trees walking. It's like what? Like, it's like, it fizzled, or, it was a dud, and Jesus, let me try again, That's not what happens, but that's what it sounds like, It's like, well, kinda, not really, see, and Jesus says, let me try again. And so the next time Jesus does it, harder, and the man says, yeah, no, that's not what happens, but it is strange. Either way you look at this is a two-stage healing. It's like, what? But two-stage healing. And when Jesus says, did it work? Can you see? Please understand, Jesus is completely able to heal this man in whatever he wants to. And he chooses to walk him outside of town, and he chooses to do it in these two stages. And I just accept that. I just do. Partly because, there was a lady in our church named was Miss Dorothy, and Dorothy was deaf. I mean, she was so hard of hearing. And so she had one of those cochlear implants. They took her in for surgery. She had a cochlear implant, and when it was over, they turned that on, brought her back in the office, and started testing Dorothy's hearing, and it still looked like she's deaf, But I remember that the doctor told her daughter Donna, just said, she can hear now, but she's been so hearing impaired for so long, Dorothy's forgotten how to listen. She'll have to remember how to listen, Now, does that make sense? This second time, Jesus places his hands on the man's eyes and his eyes are open. The Greek there says, and Jesus made him look up. It could be that the first time the healing is complete, but this man, although he can see now, he's forgotten how to look. He's forgotten how to use his eyes. And so Jesus has to open your eyes and look. Maybe some of that. Open your eyes and look, dude. At any rate, I think this story is very important. First off, as much as I wish Jesus would just always take care of my problems, in one fell swoop, boom. The way the people just brought the man to Jesus, hey, lay your hands on him and heal him, Jesus is free and unhurried, and it doesn't always happen in one fell swoop. So much of what Jesus does in my life is in stages, and maybe he could have done it all, years ago, but instead it's a process of my continuing to walk with him and talk with him, and he continues to touch me. And sometimes I need a second touch, And so, like it or not, this story right here sounds a whole lot more like Jesus works in my life. On top of that, most people point out that this story is very importantly situated in the Gospel of Mark because it parallels the way in which the disciples need a second touch. Okay, now the story we just finished. Remember yesterday I was talking about the Three Stooges and how Jesus is like Mo and just needed to conk their heads together to make them, think, And Jesus like, dude, how many? I fed the 5,000 and then I fed the 4,000. Y'all don't understand nothing, And then he tells this story about this man who Jesus is like trying to heal him from being blind, and he has to conk him in the head twice. It's like, conk, can you see now, And so then we go straight to this next story where Jesus says, who do people say I am? And the disciples are like, well, some people say you're John the Baptist, and some people say you're Elijah, or maybe one of the other prophets. Like they can't even name any other prophets. It's like, and so like, conk, at that point, it's like, they see men walking around like trees, like they still don't get it. They didn't get it the first time. And then Jesus says, but who do you say I am? And then Peter says, oh, you're the Messiah, So you see that? You see that? In the space of that far, we went from, don't y'all understand anything? To, oh, you're the Messiah, So it's like the disciples need at least a second touch, you wish that it all come to them in one fell swoop, but instead it seems to be emerging in stages here. Am I making sense? And at this point, everything changes. From this point on, Jesus... it turns a corner. And for the first time in the gospel, Jesus says he's going to be killed. He makes that announcement there in verse 31. Now, some people will say verse 30 when Jesus says, hey, don't tell anybody. The minute Peter says, you're the Messiah, Jesus is like, yeah, don't tell anybody. And then he goes right into verse 31 about how the Son of Man must suffer. Some scholars, Dr. William Lane, whom I love, who wrote an amazing commentary on the Gospel of Mark. He used to be at Western. He's just the greatest man I'll ever know. He's with the Lord now. But Dr. Lane says that it's possible here that Jesus is explaining this whole secrecy thing, like the way he's told everybody, don't tell anybody, In verse 31, it sounds like Jesus is saying, there's this whole plan of salvation, and I got to get to the end of it, and it's going to end with me getting killed, but in 3 days I'm going to rise again. He says it right there. He lays it all out. And it's almost like, this whole Messiah thing, it's not going to do any good to tell people because I'm going to have to show them, I'm going to have to suffer. I didn't come to be the Messiah the way they think I'm going to be the Messiah, and so it's probably important that I just go ahead and walk this story through. I'm going to have to die and be raised again. And it's almost like that. That's why it's not going to do any good to go telling everybody now, because until he is crucified and risen from the dead, it's not going to be something they're going to understand. Even if they think they understand it, they're going to understand it in an old Jewish perspective of the Messiah being come and bring the kingdom back to Israel. And no, they're just going to have to see me suffer. I've not come to take over like that. I have come to lay my life down. And so he begins to talk openly. And this is a point where Peter, he just had that great moment. You're the Messiah. And now he's like, Jesus, come here. Jesus. Peter's going to correct Jesus. That's what it says. He reprimands him. Like, Jesus, you were doing so good there, but if you really want to win, I'm not saying, I'm just saying, if you really want to win a crowd, man, you got to quit being so gloomy and dark. Man, I was with you till you started talking about dying, and like, nobody wants to hear that, Well, won't you tell some more of those stories, those good stories, and people like to be lifted up, like Peter's trying to tell him. And so then Jesus is like, oh my goodness, he had a second touch and thought he got it, and they're going to conk him in the head again. He's going, get behind me, Satan. You are seeing things from a human point of view. not from God's point of view. Don't we always? The human point of view, man, we want to be millionaires. We want to be blessed, and doubly blessed, and we just want all these things to just fall into place and lay in our laps. And Jesus says that's not how it is. If anybody's going to follow me, you have to give up your own way. It ain't going to be about you. It's not going to be about your blessing. It's going to be about your sacrifice. You have to pick up your cross and follow me. That's the good news. Yeah. What do you benefit if you gain the whole world and lose your soul? I mean, what's it count for if you get everything you wanted in this life and you still lose your soul in the end? Is there anything more valuable than your soul? Anyone ashamed of me, my message in these sinful days, I'll be ashamed of you when the return in glory with my Father and the holy angels. Man, boom. And that's just the best chapter. That's so good. And from this point on, Jesus will repeat this in the Gospel of Mark, this declaration. Jesus, I believe, is going to repeat that 3 times. So we'll come back to that. But pick up there with me, chapter 9 on Monday morning. Chapter 9, verses 1 to 29. This is good. We're going right from this to the transfiguration, you all. Isn't that good? So listen, read ahead, and I'll see you Monday morning right here. If you don't have a church home, man, Woodburn Baptist Church, we'd love to see you. I'm starting a new sermon series on Sunday. I'm really excited about it. It's called A Hill Far Away. It's my sermon series that leads us up to Easter. There's a mountain called Mount Moriah in Israel, and it's not one of those things where you stand there and you can see the whole world, but I'm telling you, from Mount Moriah, you can nearly see the whole Bible. And so I'm going to keep coming back to that one place, Mount Moriah, starting with Abraham and walking all the way through everything that happens on Mount Moriah. It's like you can see the whole Bible from there. So sermon series called A Hill Far Away, and that's where we'll be on Sunday morning. If I don't see you then, I will see you right here, Lord willing, 10 o'clock Monday morning for 10 with Tim. I love you guys so much. Have a great Friday.